everybody, it's Emily at Arc Schooling, and today I wanted to talk about some recent reads. I'm so cold, guys. I am like, my room is freezing. It's like 5 degrees outside, and it's like 5 degrees, but it feels like -13. So my bedroom is very cold, but it's still the quietest room in the house. So I'm gonna sit under a blanket while I film today. So if you see this like snuggie creeping up on me, it's because I'm literally freezing to death. Okay, so I've been reading some great books lately, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of back up a little bit and go back into December, because I read 2 books in December that I don't think I really talked about at all. One of them I really wanted to share, so I thought we'll just get into this and I'll talk about some of the things I've been reading lately. But let's back up into December, and I read Bruiser by Neal Shusterman. This was a book that I'd been like hyping up for myself for a while, because you guys know I love Neal Shusterman, but also I heard him say that this is one of his books that he thinks is underrated and that he was really hoping more people would pick up. So I'm like, oh, I own that. I'm going to prioritize it. So I finally did pick it up in December, and I really enjoyed it. Bruiser is a story about a boy named Bruiser, and he is sort of a loner in school. We're getting a variety of perspectives in this story. We're following a brother and a sister who are twins, and I think it's Tennyson and Bronte. Their parents are English majors, like English professors and stuff at college. So it's Tennyson and Bronte, who are twin brother and sister, and Brewster's little brother. So we're following them all in the story as they're sort of interacting with Brewster, who is this kid who doesn't really have any friends. People think he's dangerous in some way, like he's a criminal or something like that. They've made up all these stories about him, and throughout the course of the story you find out what his secret really is. I don't want to spoil it, because I feel like this is the kind of book that is better when you don't know exactly what's going on when you go in. But I will say, the writing is beautiful. Neal Shusterman is really great at giving each character a distinct voice, and each perspective is very unique. I especially really like Brewster's perspective, because his is all written in poetic verse, which I thought was really great for his character. And the story deals with a lot of different things, with pain specifically, but also with like physical pain, with emotional pain. There's talk about divorce. There's just so much great stuff happening in this book, but it's also very quiet and introspective. This is not like an action-packed story, so if you loved Unwind or Arc of the Scythe, it's not that. This, I think, is more in line with like Challenger Deep, if you've read that, where it's definitely more of a character-driven story. But I thought it was beautiful, and I gave it 4 stars. I also read, or rather listened to the audiobook for, Big Summer by Jennifer Weiner. And this one I honestly went in with extremely low expectations, because I needed a book for a prompt in the Build Your Library Reading Challenge. I was supposed to read a book that was set in my favorite vacation destination, and so I'm like, well, that's the beach, but I don't like romance, and so many of the beachy books I would come across were like very much just fluffy romance, and I didn't want to read that. And so this book was recommended to me, and I wasn't sure going in if I was going to like it, because it looks like a romance, and it starts out like it's going to be a romance. But this book was not a romance. There was a romantic element to the plot. So this story follows Daphne, and she is an Instagram influencer. She's a plus-size model as well, and so the story is about her experiences being plus size and how that's affected her throughout her life. And it starts out with her meeting up with a girl she was friends with in high school. She went to a kind of elite boarding school situation because her parents were teachers there. She was able to go without having to pay the steep tuition costs. So everyone at the school was like really rich and fancy, and so she didn't quite fit that mold. But also they were kind of snobbish. And so this girl she was good friends with in high school did something to embarrass her, and it got caught on camera, and that is what propelled her to end up becoming an influencer. But in the course of that, she also ended up hating this girl for being such a terrible person. But then 10 years later, she's like, hi, yeah, remember we were good friends? Can you be in my wedding? And so this is like the wedding of the century kind of a situation. And so she's going to use her status as an influencer to make this an event for that. And so this is what the story starts out as, is like, oh, it's about like fame and influencers and being a plus size person, and there's a romance element happening. But then the story pivots completely and it becomes an entirely different story. And that's what sucked me in. Like, the beginning was fine. I was interested in Daphne's perspective. I really liked her voice and her character specifically. Once the story pivoted, I was like, okay, hold on. Yes, please, more of that. I really enjoyed it. I was also pleasantly surprised that Daphne's character is Jewish. And so that was not a main plot point at all, but it was definitely a thing happening in the story that, like, you got to hear some of her background and her childhood and that kind of stuff. So another element of Big Summer that I really enjoyed was the whole concept of Mean Girls. And does a mean girl change? I feel like that was a big element of the story. The concept of, is she still a mean girl if she's being nice now? And like, you're learning about like why she was a mean girl. Maybe she had some hard knocks in life that you didn't see on the surface. And can somebody like that grow and change? And so that whole discussion I thought was great and really well done. Overall, again, I don't want to give anything away. I'm not going to tell you how the story pivots because that's kind of a big plot twist, I think. So I don't want to delve into that too much. But I really enjoyed it. And this also earned 4 stars. Now let's talk about the things I've read this month. We'll start with Come Tumbling Down. This is the 5th book, I believe, in the Wayward Children series. And this one was really great because it's a Jack and Jill story, and they were my favorite characters thus far. Although I will say I'm sort of pivoting to saying Cora might potentially be my new favorite character. I really like her character and very curious about her backstory. I'm hoping that the new book that just came out is a Cora book, so I'm hoping to get a lot more Cora in that one. But this one follows Jack and Jill back to the moors, which I think is maybe the coolest portal world. I would never have imagined that. Like, when you think of portal fantasy, you usually think of like fantasy worlds and magic and fae and that sort of thing. I wouldn't have thought vampires and mad scientists, and I loved that. I don't know. That's a very cool portal world. So really liked getting to go there again and see more of it. I will say Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is their first Jack and Jill focused book, was just still the best. Like, that's my favorite in the entire Wayward Children series so far. I just loved that. So that one's still my favorite. But this comes in a close second. So definitely recommend. If you have not read the Wayward Children series yet, you should definitely give it a go because, one, they're short. These are really quick, easy reads. And especially at the beginning of the year, they're great to start out with because it gives you some great satisfaction of finishing a book relatively quickly at the start of the year. But they're also just really fun and really clever. I don't know. I'm kind of getting obsessed with this series. I want to get myself caught up so I can read the newest book. Then I read The Arc of Just a Girl, A True Story of World War II by Leah Levy. This was so great. This is a middle grade, but this is, I would say, a younger middle grade. So if you've got an older tween, this might be a little bit on the juvenile side for them, but if you've got like a 7, 8, 9-year-old who's really interested in reading about World War II, this is a fantastic introduction. I found this story very fun to read, even though this is obviously somewhat dark territory here. This story reads exactly as if your grandmother is telling you stories about her childhood. And she tells it in a way that it's definitely like bad things happened, but she tells it in a way that lets you know that everything turned out okay in the end for her and her family. So there's even like sidebars, like she'll stop the story. It'll look like this in here. She'll stop the story and just say, listen guys, everything was okay. I know that was scary and maybe you were worried, but everything turned out okay and I'm fine and my family was all right. So I just think this is an excellent way to introduce the Holocaust and all of that to your children. This story is set in Italy, so she managed to escape any kind of deportment by living in a Catholic boarding school with her sisters and her mother, and they were protected there by the nuns. But it was still really interesting to read about, like, what it was like to live in Italy in that time, because most of the stories I've read set during the Holocaust and World War II are more in like Germany and Poland and France and England. So I was really interested to read about the experiences of a Jewish girl in Italy. So I highly recommend picking this up when it comes out on March 22nd. And I gave this 5 stars. And then I finished this like 2 days ago. This is Ophi's Ghosts. And this is by Justina Ireland. And I absolutely loved this book. I annotated as I was going. I was throwing all the tabs in here. I was really excited to read a middle grade by Justina Ireland because I've read Dread Nation. And while I liked the writing, I wasn't a big fan of the actual story. So I wanted to read something else by the author. And so when I heard she was writing a middle grade, I was excited. So this is excellent. Like supernatural historical fiction. Absolutely loved it. This is a story set in the 1920s in Pittsburgh, and it follows Ophelia, and her mother. And at the very beginning of the story, this isn't really a spoiler, at the very beginning of the story, her father is killed, and her mother have to leave Georgia to go live up north because she has family there that they can stay with until they get on their feet. And so this is sort of a great migration story as well. And the story centers around Ophi and her mother working in this big fancy manor for this elderly woman and her grown son. And the house is full of ghosts. Ophi can see ghosts. She has this talent where she can see the ghosts that are around and interact with them. And so she is kind of learning and understanding about this ability and power that she has and how she can use it, and also kind of unraveling a mystery that happened in this fancy manor. And it's about racism, and it's about the way people try to hide truths, either historically or in their own lives, and how those things get uncovered. No matter what you do, secrets come out. It's such a good story. Ophi is such a great character. Her voice is just wonderful. She's a really empowering character because she starts out not really understanding what she has going on here. Like, she's kind of scared, and there's also a lot in the story to do with grief because obviously her father dies at the beginning of the story, and he's murdered by white supremacists who don't like that he was acting too uppity. And so her mother and Ophi are dealing with that grief and trying to figure out how to get on with their lives after that loss. And so exploring that and exploring all the different ghosts at the house and how those ghosts ended up there and how they are affecting the people in their lives. And this story is just so well done and so multifaceted, and I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. Like I said, I tabbed it. I had so many thoughts while I was reading it. I'm doing something with this for Build Your Library as well, so not going to talk too much about that yet, but I just thought this was phenomenal, and I want to tell everyone to read it. So those are the books that I've read in the last few weeks. I've had a really good reading month so far. even in December, I had a really good reading month. So like, I'm hoping to continue that. And like, I'm excited. I'm in the middle of several things right now, and I'm excited about all of them. They're all really, really good so far. So I'm hoping that this is like a great reading year for me. Have you read anything exciting lately? Let me know down below in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye.